it's Dr. Veronica Zhao. Welcome back to Paging Dr. Zhao. Today we're going to talk about something very near and dear to my heart, rest, and why it's important for everybody.
Before we dive in, how are you resting right now?
So this is something I've been working on since the end of last year, and I am finding new and old ways to rest. One of the ways is just a simple nap, a power nap, which I've always loved, 5 or 10 minutes. Another way is meditation. Those are kind of my tried and true points. And now I'm thinking about other things in my life as rest, like the exercise I do, taking a dance break when I'm feeling grouchy at my computer, even learning to play the piano again. Those are some of the ways I'm resting. And the most important one, I think, is that I am actually trying to sleep at night for 7 or more hours a night.
You've been talking about rest as resistance. Has rest always been easy for you, and what does that actually mean to you?
No, rest has not always been easy for me. I think I was one of those babies that didn't sleep, and I got payback when I had my own babies who didn't sleep. So I think it's always been a little bit of a struggle for me. And one of the things I noticed early on, high school, college, is that I could thrive, or so I thought I could make it on very little sleep. And I think that feedback loop kind of got stuck in my head. So I started to use that as a tool to be more productive. And so I think the topic of, or the idea of rest as resistance, it's really not my own. It comes from, generations have been talking about rest as resistance, but more specifically, the book Rest as Resistance by Tricia Hersey is something I read recently, and it just came at the right time, and it was the right message. And so now I'm thinking about rest as something that's empowering. It's not a weakness. It's something that allows us to take agency over our own bodies. It's something that keeps us from using external messages about our worth, productivity as the only way of feeling like a good whole person. So rest as resistance to me is not just about political resistance, about kind of resisting these messages that we get from capitalist society, from, it kind of just permeates our culture that we need to do more and more and more. And I think that rest isn't just sleep. Sleep is a really critical thing for your doctor to be talking to you about, for you to be talking to each other about. But rest is more than just sleep. And so that's the other message here.
Why do you think rest is especially hard right now for high performers, caregivers, or people in healthcare?
So I think rest is especially hard for people who are kind of in a high performing jobs or lifestyle, or pretty much anybody. It's because we get little rewards from not resting. So you answer more email, you get more documents written, you send more messages, and people around you notice, oh, how do you get so much done? I mean, that's probably the number one thing that people say to me. How do you get all this done? How can you be a mom and have a company and still exercise and do all these things? And the secret is, I wasn't sleeping. I was waking up super early in the morning, and it became a feedback loop. And I also think that is part of the rest. It can't just be a single personal boycott of the system. Like, we all have to internalize this rest is resistance kind of mantra, and we need to hold each other accountable, make space for each other, congratulate each other when we're resting, kind of flip the script a little bit, it's going to be hard to do, but I think we can do it.
You said you want to reimagine the doctor's office as a portal of rest. What does that mean?
So my vision is twofold. Number one, that when you go to the doctor's office, it doesn't feel scary and rushed. So that starts from the minute you walk in the door, the kind of environment, the attitude of the people working in the space, the look, feel, sound, smells that you encounter. And most physicians' offices are very clinical. It's kind of standard looking, it's rushed, there's a lot of fluorescent lights, there's, crinkly paper on the table. It just kind of, it promotes this feeling of like, okay, this is transactional, we got to get in, we got to get out. So I would like that feeling of rest to start just with your first visit. So having more time, slowing down, listening, and that comes from the physician end for sure, and also the patient end. So that our interactions are not just about what treatment are you going to give me, what medication, what injection, but really more about creating a partnership of how we're going to work together. I think that is going to yield way more results than the old model. The second kind of portal of rest I see is what happens when you're not in the visit. Like, what else is your doctor's office able to offer you in terms of your health? And that's why at Avid we created things that are outside of your normal doctor's visit. So time to come together and meditate, time to exercise together. We want to do things like cook together, read together, and just hold space for the community. And creating that as part of health is really critical if we want to have a healthier, happier world, really.
You've emphasized this idea of community multiple times. Why is community such a big part of rest?
I think community is almost more important than the personal here, because if one person is doing this in a vacuum, we're not going to get the collective change that we need. And so I think that when we come together, it's about creating something together. So the rest portal that I'm bringing to Avid is not just about me having you come in and telling you what to do, because that's kind of a traditional model, right? Someone instructs you and you just do what you're told. I want everyone to share and bring their own ideas about rest. I want somebody to bring their crochet and other people to bring their books and someone to want to journal, and maybe we get ideas from each other about what rest means. And we also get permission, because if I'm doing it and you're not doing it, then I have this kind of guilt feeling like I should not be resting. I should be doing, what this person's doing over here. And I think when we come together, we give ourselves permission to rest. We're doing it as a community, and community healing is as important as your individual personal healing.
Have you found new ways of resting that have surprised you that you weren't doing in the past?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I almost never do is nothing. So even my rest usually has something attached to it. So whether I'm, doing any of those activities I mentioned, like coloring or, meditating or playing the piano or singing, there's always some sort of like action if it's not sleep oriented. And recently I've tried to spend small periods of time doing nothing. So for example, I take my trash out on Tuesday nights. And this week I decided I'm just going to stand here in the driveway and look up at the stars, because there's a beautiful sky up there, and I'm usually just going from one side to the other, and I never appreciate it. And so that was the rest. It was taking a moment, taking a few minutes, or it could be staring out the window or looking at the ceiling. And sometimes that can be scary, because what happens is your thoughts are pretty much not avoidable. There's nothing distracting you. And that's the time where we can really actually zoom in on our thoughts. We don't have to accept every thought we have in our head as true, but it's a time to tune in to see what's going on in there. What have we been ignoring? What can we release? Maybe new ideas, maybe new dreams. Like when I was a kid, an only child, I had a lot of time to myself, okay? And I would spend a lot of time making myself laugh. And I would just crack jokes, and I would lie on the floor and laugh. And I must have looked so goofy at the time, but I think that this kind of just be with yourself, let yourself make yourself laugh, let yourself make yourself feel good. Like this is all part of like self-love and care.
Can you remember the time where you felt the most rested? And what did you do after you got that type of rest?
I think the last time I felt really rested was after going on a vacation. It wasn't even like a long, extravagant vacation. It was going up to the Russian River, floating on the river for a day, hanging out at the beach, really not having anything that I needed to do. No schedule, no obligations, just complete go with the flow kind of day. And I think, what did I do after? Well, I drove home and started working again. But what I think happens in your nervous system is that you store that feeling, like you store it, and then you can go back to it during your day. You know, so for example, when I do an injection on a patient and I can tell they're really nervous, I often say, you know, close your eyes and go to your happy place. And so that is something that you could do with that kind of moment. You take it, you can close your eyes, you can go back there, and I think you actually mimic those physiologically. I think you mimic that state when you do that.
After you felt that type of rest, do you find that you are more productive or more satisfied with the work that you're doing?
That's an interesting question because, you know, the opposite is supposed to be true. The more you work, the more you get done. I think what happens is that I approach my work more calmly, and there's that little like panicky like voice inside that's like rushing when I'm not rested, and then I make more mistakes, and then it takes me longer to do things, and then, you know, I'm tripping over the cat and I'm breaking stuff in the kitchen, things like that. But if I slow down, I think I have better ideas. I think I get the same amount of work done faster, and I think there's less catastrophes, you know? There's less broken things, there's less stubbed toes, the cat's happier. You know, I think it really works out for everybody.
Over the years, you've offered a lot of different movement and rest experiences. What keeps pulling you back to those?
I think the thing about those is that we need them, and they're not present in a typical doctor's office. Yet almost every person I see needs some sort of rest as part of their healing. Even if you're coming to me with knee pain, like, I'm gonna ask you, are you sleeping? What are you doing? What are you doing all day? Are you sitting at your desk and never moving? You need to get up and have active rest. And I think so what pulls me back is the fact that it's one of the most powerful healing tools we have, yet the least used and least prescribed. And creating, you know, we have done a lot of different classes, and they've been kind of the typical model, like fitness class, go to the gym, small group classes. And I love those because I am an exercise enthusiast. I have been exercising since I've been doing like online, or before it was online, TV aerobics since I was in middle school. So I love that format. However, it's not something people really have been overwhelmingly excited about or accepting of at the doctor's office. I think it's a little like we have these compartmentalized places. The gym is where I do this, the doctor's office is where I do this, the grocery store is where I do this. And so it hasn't been like people beating down our door for the fitness classes. So when I step back and think like when people do come, what do they love? They love the beats and breath work, the laser meditation, the sound baths, and those are the kinds of activities that we can weave in movement, we can weave in health, we can really weave in connection. And so that's where I'm going with the Rest Portal, is not so much a class with an instructor telling you to do a certain stretch. It's more you listening to yourself, you making the decision, having the opportunity, the space, the permission, and the support. And then you create your own version of rest.
So how does someone discern between what is restful and what is laborious? What some may consider restful, like going fishing, is like, oh, this feels like good rest. So another person may say, oh, I gotta lug this pole and this.
I think you have to listen to your inner voice, because that's a really good point, is everyone's rest is not the same. And For some people, going to, a strength training class is like they don't want to do it. It's like they're fighting tooth and nail. It feels like work. For other people, it's a mental release and they feel expansive and it brings them back to their body. And the only way to know that is to listen to yourself and experiment.
Let's talk about rave runs, because that doesn't sound like rest to most people. How does that fit?
So rave runs is something new that we're starting, and it's exactly what it sounds like. We're gonna run and then we're gonna have a dance party or a rave. And the reason that is restful, and again, it's not for everybody, but a release, moving your body, music, being around other people, lighthearted silliness, feeling free. That's really what that's about. And that is a form of rest that many people don't get. So even though it's not a nap, it is a form of letting our guards down and letting that kind of part of our brains that's telling us we have to be super serious about something, or we have to make some goal, or check something off the box. It's not there. You're just coming, you're just enjoying, and that's what makes it rest.
Would you say rest is the absence of responsibility, which is why it can be so many different things?
That's an interesting question. I think that's definitely part of it. When we feel like we're responsible for other people or we have to react to other people, it's hard to get into that rest zone. It's hard to listen to your inner voice. It's hard to really know what you want. So I don't think you have to shut yourself in a room in order to get that and be away completely from people, but I do think that the responsibility shifts from task-oriented to more community-oriented, and that is maybe the difference.
What do you think people are actually craving when they show up to things like rave runs?
Well, sometimes they were craving novelty. Sometimes they're looking for this exuberant experience. And I think at the end of the day, what people are really looking for is to feel joyful and playful and outside of their normal daily routines. So doing that in a community setting, there have been so many day raves, and that's kind of a movement, at least in this area. There's lots of daytime parties. I think people are kind of done with the nighttime club. Feels like a little too serious, too judgy. You gotta wear something nice, you gotta look a certain way, act a certain way. Whereas a daytime run rave, who even knows what that is? You can show up however you want. You can wear sparkling cat ears, you can wear tie-dye, you can just come as you are. And I think that is a joyful place for most people.
If someone is listening and feels exhausted but doesn't know how to rest, what would you want them to hear?
First of all, there's nothing wrong with you. If you don't know how to rest, it's not your fault. It's not some deficiency. It's literally the world we live in sending you that message. So just stop giving yourself a hard time. Second thing is, it doesn't have to look the same as everyone else, and it doesn't have to be some big grand thing. You can rest for 1 minute. Even 1 minute is going to make a difference. So start off with something tiny, something small. Close your eyes, just go into the bathroom and have a pause with yourself. And the second thing is try new things. Don't be afraid. It's not something where you have to get it right. Be curious about how you might feel doing different things. Make yourself a nice meal, or paint your toenails, or do something, try different things, and don't always make it something that you're familiar with, because you're gonna surprise yourself when you try new things. Hello, welcome to the Honest Doc segment of our podcast, where I talk to a clinician and friend about some of the topics that we've been discussing and how it relates to science and being a human. So today I'm joined by my dear friend, Dr. Caitlin Durkee, who's a neuroscientist studying the brain, but we've also had some really interesting discussions about rest. So I wanted to bring her on and get her perspective. Many people think scientists and doctors, it's just all about productivity, performance, and just pushing through. But science tells us we do need to rest. So today we're going to talk about that. And welcome, Caitlin.
Hello.
Before we get started, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what kind of work you do.
Yeah, so thank you, Veronica, for having me, or Dr. Zhao.
I can be Veronica.
Okay. Yeah, so I am, first, I just want to say I'm not a medical doctor, but I do have a doctorate, but in neuroscience. So I've spent most of my career studying the brain. And that is what I still do. I got my PhD in neuroscience, studying these really cool cells in the brain called astrocytes. And that brought me out here to San Francisco. And now I work for a small drug discovery company doing all their mouse work, studying the brains of these mice when we give them drugs and seeing what it does to their brains. So that's kind of what I've been busy with the last few years.
Great. What kinds of drugs? Is it a specific type that you work on?
We try to treat various types of central nervous system disorders, but the drugs that we have in clinical trials right now are for schizophrenia and autism spectrum disorder and Alzheimer's disease psychosis. And what I'm working on with a current drug that's in development is for Alzheimer's disease agitation. So yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So neuroscience talks a lot about why people need to rest, and that the cycles of rest actually help us be more productive and probably reduce a lot of diseases.
Yes.
Why do you think humans really need rest?
Well, I think case in point is if you don't rest, you die. So the old, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead adage is kind of interesting because you will die if you don't sleep. So there's that. There's also, as you mentioned, if you don't get adequate sleep, kind of these toxins build up in your brain. They aren't sufficiently flushed out. So there are a lot of sleep disturbances in many psychiatric diseases and diseases related to aging. And there must be a very evolutionarily powerful reason that it's evolved in us, because we sleep for a third of our life. And from like an evolutionary, like, survival standpoint, when you're sleeping, you're not able to protect yourself. So it must offer many other advantages that you don't get during the waking life. So there's actually like a lot of reason to ask, like, why are we awake? Like, 'cause so much happens when we're sleeping that's restoring our brain, that's kind of like doing its own thing, for a third of our day. So
I love that. I'm embarrassed to say I used to say things like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. But I'm reformed. Okay. I'm reformed. And I now believe in the power of sleep. I've actually been reading or listening to that book you suggested.
Yep.
What is it called?
Why We Sleep?
Why We Sleep.
By Matt Walker. I mean, most of what I'm saying comes from his mouth. So if you want to look up anything after this, just like read his book. It's really fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
It's dense.
Yeah.
It's a little dense.
Yeah.
So when we don't rest, people kind of push past exhaustion, and I noticed in myself, my mood is off.
For sure.
My impulse control is off. I can't concentrate.
Yep.
So what do you notice when we push past exhaustion and we don't give time to recover? I mean, before death. What's the kind of things?
What are the other bad things? Yeah, I mean, it restores our neurotransmitter levels and ion homeostasis in the brain. It's just like a reset. And so if we don't get that, and another like really fascinating thing about sleep is, and I think Matt Walker talks about this, it's like when you're sleeping, you kind of go through these emotionally reactive scenarios that you had in the previous day, but it's without epinephrine. Like, epinephrine levels are lower. So you're kind of reenacting the emotionally salient memory without the like heightened emotional arousal. So you can like process through it. And like, there's actually been a link with folks who have post-traumatic stress disorder. Their epinephrine levels stay high when they sleep. So they're still going through that emotionally lightened experience with like the emotion arousing chemicals. And so they aren't able to like work through and get past the kind of like nightmares and like repetitive kind of
that's really
reimagining.
fascinating.
Yeah. So it's like therapy because you're going through all these emotional experiences in kind of like a safe environment for you to like process them, so you can wake up. I mean, like just sleep on it is like a very real thing that we've known that for centuries. And I think you mentioned somewhere in this, like, science is just like kind of providing the data for what we've known forever.
What our bodies already feel,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But we need data.
But yeah, we do need data. As a scientist, I do feel like we need data. So yeah, and then also sleep is just really important for retaining memories, being able to learn new things. It's important as for athletes to get enough sleep so you can perform better. There have been numerous studies where athletes either sleep a full 8 hours or don't, and their performance is like significantly affected by that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it mirrors the anatomic recovery and physiologic recovery in their body, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
there are a lot of things that go wrong when you don't get adequate sleep.
And sleep is one very, like, probably the most important form of rest, but sleep's not the only form of rest.
Totally.
So what do you think are the other ways that people can restore their brain?
As silly as it sounds, like going on a walk outside, preferably not with your phone, and preferably in nature. There was this really interesting podcast that I was listening to about fractals and how fractals are really restoring to the brain because they're natural. Like in this urban landscape, if you go on a walk in an urban landscape, there are fewer fractals in the environment. And that, in order for our brain to process things that are not fractal, it takes more energy. So it's not as a restorative walk as it would be if you were in nature, because there are more fractals. And it's just a little bit more soothing to process that information.
And for people who don't know what a fractal is, how would you
think of
define
the
that?
like golden rule, the like Fibonacci sequence? They're kind of like repeating patterns that go all the way down, like the Romanesco cauliflower or broccoli, whatever that vegetable is. Like that is a great example of a fractal, or like seashells. But like trees have fractal patterns.
Okay.
But it's kind of like a reproducible pattern on many scales.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who knew trees were so therapeutic?
I know. I know. So yeah, going on walks, even just like wakeful rest. Like you don't have to fall asleep, but you can just be quiet but awake. Also is really restoring. And also during those time periods, especially if you like just learned something and then you rest, there's a thing called memory recall where it like cycles through the thing that you just learned to kind of like cement it into your brain and strengthen those connections. And you can like see this in rats where they like are resting at a decision point after they've done some task. And you can see in their brain pattern, they're like cycling through the path that they just were on, or like what their next step is going to be. So it kind of,
wow,
that's really fascinating.
That is really fascinating.
Yeah.
But why is it so hard for us to rest? I mean, if you tell somebody to put their phone down and rest, they start to get anxious.
Totally. And especially for people who are kind of like high achievers and like are always doing something, you've kind of conditioned your brain. Like your brain is a prediction machine. So if you have been conditioning it for decades to always be on this kind of like high alert, nonstop activity, your brain is predicting that. And if you don't get that feedback internally and externally that you're like going to do this thing and this thing and this thing, but you just rest, it's kind of like a deficit. Like you're not getting that input that you need. And learning that is actually really metabolically expensive. Like the two most metabolically expensive things for your brain are movement and learning. So if you're doing something that's new, aka you're learning, that's like kind of feels weird and kind of feels bad. And there's also all these like psychological components of just like, you don't feel like you're like, if I'm not doing this one thing, everybody else is working harder than me, so they're going to get ahead of me. But really, you know, if I want to do a task really well, taking that rest is going to enable me to do it better. So
it's an advantage.
Yeah.
That's how we have to sell it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if you want to do this thing better, you actually do need to rest. I know it sounds like super counterintuitive, but yeah. And I mean, like, dopamine plays a huge role in this. If you're like scrolling on your phone or constantly doing something, you're getting little dopamine hits. And if you withhold those dopamine hits, that just doesn't feel good. So,
yeah. I think people also think that rest has to be the absence of thoughts. You know, I love meditation, and a lot of people say, oh, I can't meditate because I can't turn off my brain.
Yeah.
But that is not the actual practice. It's letting the thoughts come and then not attaching to them.
Totally. Oh, yeah. I didn't even mention meditation. Yeah, like, absolutely. There's a reason it's been around for centuries.
Right? So we need to deprogram ourselves a little bit. Like,
exactly.
Give ourselves a break.
And it doesn't even need to be long. It's like 5-10 minutes. So that's a reset.
Yeah. One of my favorite forms of rest is kind of joyful rest, you know, laughter, music, movement, that kind of thing. So do you think those are just as beneficial as?
Absolutely. I mean, they kind of target different types of transmitter systems and hormones in your brain, like oxytocin, which is kind of like the connection hormone, or endorphins, kind of like the feel good hormones. I mean, like, singing in a group of people, I'm sure we've all experienced this, is like this huge feeling of just like connection and like euphoria, or like going to a concert or some sort of music show. Like, those, you know, they're like restorative because you can like feel it really tangibly. And also, I mean, like, we are very social creatures. We have to, like, it's becoming more apparent in the science, which again, we've probably known forever, that like having social connections, is particularly as you age, increases longevity. So yeah. And I mean, and even on the flip side, not having those connections is really detrimental. Like, if you are socially isolated, that can have negative effects on your mental health. So yeah, it goes both ways to kind of show that it's incredibly important for your brain to get all the types of inputs that it needs. So yeah,
and social rest is kind of a new concept for us. And we started the Avid Rest portal.
That's right.
So once a month, we're having people come to the space and rest.
Yep.
And I noticed the first time, some people were having a very hard time with that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and going back to like, why is rest hard? I feel it like when I don't have anything to do on the weekends, after always having something to do during the week, work related, I actually do feel really uncomfortable. I cannot let myself rest. And like, I get so tied up in things that I actually don't feel like it restored me at all. So it's a very real thing.
Oh, it's something we could practice, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. With anything, with repetition, you'll get used to it. Your brain is plastic. It changes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I want to go back to one thing you said before, kind of how rest is that it's your body's time to like get rid of the metabolic waste in your brain.
Yeah.
What's happening and how does that help our long-term brain health?
Yeah, so this actually relates back to my first love in science, in neuroscience, which was the study of astrocytes, which are a type of glial cell. And what I think you're referencing is the glymphatic system, which clears out toxins while you sleep. And it gets, the glymphatic gets its name because it's a merge of lymphatic, which is like your body's like metabolic waste removal system,
right? And
glia, which astrocytes are a type of glial cell, so glymphatic system. And really what it does is when you're sleeping, it activates this glial lymphatic system to kind of essentially create more space for the toxins to flow. And so if they're constricted, you don't really have a lot of flow. And so you have buildup of toxins like amyloid beta, which is implicated in Alzheimer's disease. So, and these astrocytes are essentially contracting so that they're creating kind of like negative space so that this internal kind of conduction system has more room to flow. And that was like super fascinating to learn about.
Glymphatic.
Yeah.
I'll have to say in medical school, I never heard that term.
I mean, it only became a thing when I was getting my PhD, which was like 2015.
But that's really cool because when you think about what our lymphatic system does to the rest of our body, then you can correlate that to the brain.
Yeah, I mean, and just think about all the metabolic, like you exerting energy and just being awake creates a lot of metabolic products. And those need to be released from your brain, like cleared out from your brain so that it's reset and restored to do all the same thing the next day. And so if you don't have that, there's this buildup. And Mike Nedergaard is the scientist who I think coined the term glymphatic system, or at least she's the one who's been doing so many of the like seminal studies in that. And that's also why there's a strong correlation of like sleep disruption and psychiatric disease in older age.
Yeah.
Like it's hard because there aren't many longitudinal studies, but it does seem like perhaps it could be causal.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a speculation.
I need to get sleeping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's Alzheimer's in my family. So probably really a good reminder.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I could talk to you for like 2 more hours.
Yeah.
But we're coming to the end. I'm going to definitely have to have you back on.
Okay.
I want to ask the one final question.
Okay.
What's your favorite form of rest?
Ooh. Well, I have a couple of things. One, it sounds so stupid, but I love to watch soccer. So like on a Saturday morning, now that the English Premier League's back on, I just sit and watch a game of soccer on my couch. And it's just kind of this passive kind of way. And I cuddle with my cat, so I get my oxytocin and like feel good. Like it's just like a really nice way to reset.
And soccer is something you love because you play
I love soccer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the other is just, I mean, I don't know if many people would think of it as rest, but just like going on a walk, I really tried to not take my phone or listen to anything. Like even like listening to a podcast, like, I'll be productive on this walk.
Right.
It's and I really try to like pay attention to everything around me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to give my favorite moment of resting with you was when we went to Guerneville last year, and we one of my favorite moments where we were all singing karaoke together. Very funny show tunes, but it kind of got at that like joyful rest and the collective rest, and it was like really fun.
Yeah,
so,
that was a very restorative.
I won't make you sing right now.
Please.
So, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I hope that anybody listening now thinks of rest as more than just, something they have to do, check off the list. Like it's vital. It's vital for us. And if we want to live the healthiest, happiest life we can, we need to prioritize. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I'm like a huge sleep proponent. Going to sleep is maybe one of my favorite things.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for being on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
See you next time. Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's really what I wanted to share today about rest and rest is resistance. If you've been listening to today's topic and there's one thing I want you to take away, it's that it's not too late. We can start today. We can all rest, and it's one of the most radical things we can do for ourselves and each other. I'm Dr. Veronica Zhao, and this was Paging Dr. Zhao. Thank you so much for listening. Hope to have you join us again for the next episode.